About a year ago, we wrote a book
called The Wellness Syndrome.
In this book, we criticized people obsessed with wellness, fitness freaks, and people who went out of their way to try and optimize all aspects of their life, even including their toilet habits.
But then people started to ask us, have you ever tried any of these things out for yourself?
Yeah, but the honest answer, I guess, was no, we hadn't. So, in the name of science, we decided to put aside one whole year and try out everything.
So the first thing we did back in January was to buy all of these technological gadgets.
Like this one here, it tracks all of my sleep, my heart rate, it tells you all about my health.
And this little thing here, you can see this device, it gives me an electric shock. It's designed to correct unwanted behavior.
But there's this great thing about it, it's got a remote control.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
what do you have there on your
on my forehead. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. On my forehead, there's this thing that tracks my brain waves, so I have an accurate perspective of how my different sort of brain waves are going at different times.
So to become faster, stronger, fitter, more productive, we left our academic offices and set out to change our lives and become optimized.
There was only one small problem with this. I personally thought this was a terrible idea. I mean, Carl comes up with all sorts of crazy ideas, but this was probably hands down the worst he's ever come up with so far. But the only problem is he's very convincing sometimes. So on the 1st of January, it all began.
Okay, André here is this drifting workaholic with about 1 million commitments at the same time. So I thought, if we were going to do this, we had to spend 1 month to optimize work.
I actually liked January. I could sit and do all my different work projects, juggle my commitments. I also got to test out these different productivity hacks, like Pomodoros, going on a news fast. Carl, however, was taking it to an extreme, like always.
Yeah, my goal was to finish writing an academic book in 1 month. So I met up with a productivity coach who gave me a schedule, which I followed religiously. I woke up 5 a.m. every morning and worked like a madman. So by the end of the month, alone, isolated in a house in the Swedish archipelago, I collapsed. I was bedbound for 3 days, and I got a really high fever, 40.5 degrees Celsius. I finished the last chapter of the book on the last day of the month, underneath this sweaty blanket, and sent it off to the publisher.
February was pretty good for me as well. I mean, I've always been into running, and we decided to optimize our bodies during this month. So I decided maybe I could just run another marathon.
So I went to see a doctor, and the doctor told me that I had to rest for at least a week, but I felt I had no time for that. So after 3 days, I entered a gym and met my new personal trainers. And I should say this was the first time in my life I set foot in a real gym.
Carl thought I was being unambitious, just carrying on like normal. So I thought, okay, I better try a few things out. So I went and got some fitness clothes, some expensive running gear. I tried it out.
And my personal trainer said that if I was going to gain any muscles, I had to start eating massive quantities of protein, like 3/4 of a kilo each day. So I stuffed myself with meat and chicken and fish and flushed it all down with protein shakes and creatine, and I spent all my days in the gym.
Carl came back to me one day and said, look, André, you're not trying hard enough. Why don't you do something like maybe an Ironman, or at least run 100 kilometers barefoot?
And you went to this to please me, the Morning Glory.
Yeah, of course. I went to this thing called Morning Glory, which is a rave where you start 6 a.m. before work, and the idea is that you rave the way into the day.
So one day, as I was stocking up on chicken and fish in the supermarket, I received an email from my publisher, and they said that they weren't that pleased with the book I had sent them the previous month. They said I had to revise it, but I reacted very, very strongly to this. I think it was all of the protein and testosterone that messed with my brain. So on the spot, I took out my phone and sent back this short, angry email insisting we break the contract. So to calm my nerves, I went back home and had half a kilo of salmon.
On the last day of the month, I ran an ultra marathon. It wasn't 100 Ks, it was just 50 Ks, but I was pretty proud with myself.
Yeah, and I signed up for a professional weightlifting competition. And I came last, of course, and I was beaten by this 14-year-old boy with glasses who looked mysteriously like André. But I was quite pleased with my performance, although I think for the people there, this is what you're going to remember.
Yeah, well, at the end of the month, after I'd run this marathon, Carl was pretty unhappy with me, and the only thing I really had to show for it were these blisters. I think that was the only thing he really liked out of the whole thing.
March. So now it was time to optimize the brain, and I immediately became obsessed with these memorization techniques.
I took up computer programming. Not my idea, of course. His idea, Carl's.
Yeah, so I began with memorizing all of the American presidents and then the Swedish prime ministers, most of the capitals of the world. And then I decided I should memorize the first 100 decimals of pi.
I hated computer programming. It took too long. It took me away from my other commitments. It was distracting me from work.
3.141592.
I was getting really, really anxious, and he was getting angry.
And after having memorized 500 decimals, I was getting quite obsessed here, I decided to go for 1,000.
At this point, I felt like I really had to do something, so I went and visited this Russian brain hacker. He hacked into my brain using a strange combination of electrical currents and also cold laser techniques.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, things were getting really bad between me and André at this point. And we had already decided that April would be dedicated to optimizing relationships. And the original plan was to become a better dad and a better husband, but we urgently needed to fix our relationship, the two of us. Problem was that we live in two different countries, but we were able to find a cognitive behavioral therapist who agreed to counsel us over Skype.
I had to deal with my anger somehow, so I took up kickboxing. I also went to this man camp in the middle of the Scottish wilderness. It was freezing, and I joined 70 other men naked. We danced around a bonfire together, chanting Native American songs and banging drums.
Yeah. At the same time, I was sitting back home trying to learn French in 1 month.
On the last day of the month, we met again in Paris for our last therapy session.
Yeah, and André actually seemed to have changed because he now insisted that we should go into a McDonald's and do rage yoga.
Rage yoga, it's kind of like normal yoga, but you just drink a beer while you're doing it, swear a lot, and listen to death metal.
Yeah, so this is after the terrorist attacks in Paris, and there are soldiers walking around with big machine guns. And I mean, running into a McDonald's in black clothes and then swearing loud in a foreign language didn't really seem to be the best idea. So I managed to talk André out of this, and we did the rage yoga at home instead.
The following day, I sat next to Carl in a Parisian radio studio. He did an hour-long interview in his broken French, but I hugged him afterwards.
Yeah. May. So now it was time to become spiritual. I started off to become a vegetarian, and then I became a vegan, and then I switched to eating only raw food. And by the end of the month, during the last 5 days, I stopped eating altogether.
I spent my month...
I'm not done there.
Oh,
I did
okay.
more. So at the end of this, when I'm getting really, really weak by the end of the fast, I wanted to try out all of these different New Age things. So I went to a psychic who doing the tarot cards, and I went on a shamanistic drum travel.
Well, Carl was off drum traveling, finding his mythical animal. I was test driving 4 different religions in 1 month. I chanted, I prayed, I met holy men, I read religious texts. And on the very last day of the month, I got up. It was my birthday. I woke up before dawn, walked up to the highest mountain in the UK, sat down, and I meditated about my own death.
Yeah. So now it's getting tricky. It's June, and we had decided at the start of the year that June would be about sex. Both André and I dreaded this, and my wife had been very explicit that she wanted no part in this stupid experiment. So I was left to explore the world of autoerotic lovemaking, and I had to try out these various tools, which, to be absolutely honest with you, didn't really improve my self-love.
Yeah. My partner felt exactly the same way as Carl's, so I was forced to turn towards the world of pornography. To be honest with you, I have no experience in this whatsoever, so I thought I'd be very scientific about it. I got a very complex spreadsheet up and running. I recorded against every single 85 categories of pornography, my reactions against it, and my muse up here, it helped me to keep track of my neurological activities.
Yeah. So now it's July, and the focus for this month is pleasure, and we have both taken up a hedonistic lifestyle.
Yeah, well, I've been a vegetarian for 16 years. Just the other day, I had my first hamburger.
And I just picked up smoking again, having quit 5 years ago, which is truly enjoyable.
So we've been doing this for 6 months now. Have we learned anything?
Well, I mean, I think the question of why you do this is, I think, I'm not so sure there is a sort of deep why question here. I mean, people go to the gym to feel better about themselves or to lose weight, or people pick up mindfulness to be less stressed, or they want to boost their brains to be able to learn things more quickly. But, I mean, when you were practicing to do your ultra marathon, did anyone ask you why you were doing this?
No.
So I suppose everyone would just go, wow, that's amazing, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and I mean, just imagine a book with the title, Why You Should Run a Marathon, or Why You Should Become More Productive, or Why You Should Lose Weight. I mean, no one would want to buy a book like that because no one's asking those questions. It's all about how. How could you become more productive? How could you lose weight? Or how could you run a marathon?
But there's got to be a why here somewhere.
Well, I mean, I suppose there is a why, but of all the people that I met during this year, no one seems to have delved into kind of deep existential motives as to why they're doing this thing. If I would ask someone at my gym, they wouldn't say that they go there in order to forget about the terror of emptiness or to deal with the dread of being human.
But surely you've learned something.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've learned things, I think I've learned to become more productive. I did actually write that book in 1 month.
Okay, but you've been testing out. While you were testing out writing that book, you didn't have any fun. You stayed indoors all day long. You didn't watch a film, didn't watch any news, and they rejected your book at the end of the day. But also remember, in February, you went and built up your muscles, and then in March, you just lost them all, right?
Yeah, okay, so I see your point. You concentrate on one thing, and then you sacrifice something else. But I don't think that's the whole story. I mean, if you think about it, I'm still going to that gym, you're still doing your running, I'm doing my daily mindfulness.
Were you feeling really mindful when you went into that masturbation booth the other day?
Well, actually, I've got to be honest here and say that it was thanks to the mindfulness I actually got through that experience. I mean, focus on your breathing, don't be judgmental, be kind and forgiving to yourself. If it wasn't for the mindfulness, I think I would have died in there. I mean, imagine the headline, Swedish academic dies while
doing mindfulness.
Well, actually, I think we've learned quite a lot. I mean, all of these techniques, I mean, they work quite well. It's just, I don't think that we've learned that much existentially.
What, like what it means to be human?
Yeah, I mean, for that, you would need to ask another set of questions, not just how.
So we've got 6 more months to go. August, we're going to boost our creativity. In September, we're going to earn as much money as possible.
And if we are going to make money in September, we probably have to give it all away again in October because that month is dedicated to doing as much good as we can.
But that could come in handy because in November, we're going to focus on vanity. And I know Carl over here is already planning to buy 1,000 or 10,000 friends on Facebook.
And then finally, in December, we are going to use the whole month and try to understand why we've been doing this. What is the meaning?
So in our previous book, The Wellness Syndrome, we criticized all of these things from a safe distance. Now we're close up, doing them ourselves, and things look quite different.
Yeah, but it's really hard to say exactly what that difference is, because once you take out the distance between yourself and the object of your study, it's really hard to be clever, as you may see. And try and think straight, having like a metal barbel crashing down on your head.
We don't know whether this is some kind of strange scientific experiment.
Or maybe it's just a very well-designed midlife crisis.
We're not really sure whether this is a new methodology of doing research,
Or perhaps you could see it as a very, very good excuse to spend a whole year doing all of these things that you would otherwise not do and just trying to have as much fun as possible.
I was hesitant at first, but I finally come to realize there are a few pleasures in this.
Ah! Okay, thank you very much.